Trevor, two quick questions for you, and thanks for doing this. The first one is, how can you put in perspective how much your job changed over the last year in preparation for this draft?
Well, it's interesting. I think we've learned a lot on how we can improve the way we operate in the scouting world through this pandemic, and this being the second draft. It's interesting because you look back, and last year's draft, we had the bulk of the live scouting coverages done, and then we relied on video after that. This year, it was kind of the opposite. We relied on the video at the start. Then leagues started to play games. We got into our live coverage, except for Ontario. And then we went back to video after that. So I think we learned a lot on how we can supplement our live scouting coverage, and also the way we operate during meetings and interviews. We've been able to do a lot of our meetings over the computer, virtually, and the same as doing virtual interviews with the players and being able to spend more time with all these draft prospects.
Second question for you is a bit complicated, but obviously you always want to pick the best players available. And sometimes if you have a need, you have to fill that need if you feel a player's NHL ready. Now with the stagnant cap for the foreseeable future, how much more the onus is on projecting or selecting players that are closer to being NHL ready?
Well, our job as scouts is projection. And, that's the most difficult part of the job, is projecting. We're scouting 17, 18-year-old young men, and obviously they're going to grow and mature at different rates. It's always up to the players when they come to their first training camp, get into some rookie tournament games, rookie games, maybe some preseason NHL games. And what we always say, they sort themselves out. You can look at our depth chart now at our prospect pool, and you yourself and everyone else on the call can take a look at, the areas that we're lacking with regards to our prospects. And obviously we always want to take the best player available at that pick. But we're also looking at filling some holes as well throughout the draft. And with 11 picks, we have a lot of opportunities to do so.
Éric Leblanc, RDS.
Hey, hello, Trevor. We heard your GM talking a few minutes ago. Like you were saying, there are some holes to fill in the team. But how would you evaluate the value of your picks this year, because it's just a different season?
Well, that's a good question, because with the type of season it was and the lack of live coverage, the lack of coverage for some leagues, a lot of prospects, we feel that maybe we can hit some home runs throughout the entire draft, and that's what we're going to try to do. We've done our best to, even look back at players, video on players, and reading our own scouting reports from 2 seasons ago, not just this past season. So we feel that, there are going to be some prospects slip through the cracks, and, and that may even there'll be some prospects go through this draft and they'll get selected next year or the year after and become NHL players. That's just the way it is. That's the hand we've been dealt with in this world that we live in today. So we're going to do our best to, to try to get as many NHL players as we can in this draft.
And how do you make sure to have a fair evaluation of the players from the OHL?
Another good question. I mean, we were lucky enough to see the higher end prospects play for Team Canada at the Under-18 World Junior Championships in Dallas, Texas. That gave us a good feeling and some reassurance as to what we've seen from them as underage players and through video from their underage year. But there are a lot of OHL players and players that would have played in the OHL that didn't 2 years ago as underage players that, they're going to become pros. And we've done our best. We've got real strong scouting staff. We've got scouting staff that have experience and have game coverages below the junior level. So we're relying on them, and we're relying, on the video coverage that we have as well to project. But I mean, a lot of these players in Ontario haven't played for 16 months, and a lot can change in young men in 16 months. I mean, we all go back and look at where we were at that age. And I mean, we certainly change as young men, you know, moving on from high school into college, university, whatever it may be, if we look at our own history back then. So it's going to be interesting to see where all these young players end up down the road in 4 or 5 years from now.
Alexis Bélanger.
Good morning, Trevor. Regarding the QMJHL, of course, there was a lot of talk last year with your draft. Just curious to hear from you about some of the top prospects from the Q, thinking about the Bourgault, Lheureux, Bolduc. What do you feel they could be and how high they could be in the draft this year, maybe?
Well, as I say every year, I mean, the draft is a game of poker, so I'm not about to show my hand to anybody out there right now, or the hand of the Montreal Canadiens. So I can't talk about individual players. Sorry about that. So is there a general question that you'd like me to answer instead?
Sure. Just in another topic, if you don't mind,
sure.
Since you're not going to go there. Just with the team, you know, of course, as the further they go during the playoffs, the further back you drop on the board. I'm just curious, of course, you want the Canadiens to be successful in the playoffs, but just does that change anything in your work? Because you prepare maybe and look at the position on the board, and then as the team drop, what change may be in your preparation?
Yeah, no, you're right. Another good question. We look at that and, you know, we drop from possibly picking 16th overall to 30th in the first round, and then 31st in every other round. So, and also we have Tampa's second round, which is also behind us in the second round. So we go from middle of each round to the end of each round, which makes a big difference because you're almost picking into the following round. So what happens is that you're looking at a totally different pool of prospects, and the pool of prospects is greater because you're not sure who's going to go in front of you. So, you know, we got to be ready. It's more work when you're picking later because you have to do more extensive work and a lot more prospects to be ready for that pick. So we've done that, and we're ready to go, and we'll cross our fingers. I always tell you guys that, you know, we're looking for helps along the way, players that we don't have as rated as high as they go in the draft. And we're looking for a lot of helps this year, picking at number 30.
Martin McGuire.
Merci, Paul. Bonjour, Trevor. Recently, Mark did a lot of acquisition on the NHL level. Big man, strong man, especially on the D-core, but with the forward group too. Is there a trend that you want to follow for the future, having more bigger guys?
Yeah, you just have to be careful with trends because they can change quickly, as we all seen for the past 5 years. So, you know, we're looking for the best player available. I mean, you know, if we go back and look at, then why did you draft Cole Caufield? And, you know, we all know what he turned out to be so far. So, as I said, you pick the best player available and just be careful with trends because they may change.
Merci, Martin. Follow up with Stéphane Leroux.
Hey, Trev. You picked 29 guys in the past 3 years. That's a lot of guys. And of course, there's already 3 from 2018 that were dropped because of the lack of contracts and everything. Would you say now that, again, you have a lot of picks this year, maybe starting round 3, round 4, you will more goes with the NCAA players because you can keep them a lot longer on your list instead of the CHL players?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'll end up by the end of the draft with 11 selected players. You know, Mark does an outstanding job at moving picks around and getting asset value in return, moving picks to the next season, maybe packaging 2 for 1 or 1 for 2, that sort of thing. So, you know, it's hard to project what's going to happen. I mean, the Europeans, we also have 4 years on them as well. So, you know, the draft is like a living organism. It's always changing. So we just go with the flow and be prepared, be ready. and be confident in the list, the draft board that we have, which we are. And, you know, we can discuss that at the end of Saturday as to where we end up with regards to the number of prospects and where they're from.
I know you don't want to talk about specific guys from the Quebec Junior Hockey League, but the fact that they played this year instead of the OHL did not play, do you feel it's an advantage for them?
Yeah, I think it is. And sometimes it's good to know a lot about a little than a little about a lot, if you know what I'm getting at there. So, you know, we do have extensive live coverage of a lot of Quebec players. Unfortunately, you know, the Maritimes was hard to get in and out of with their own bubble, so they didn't get as much of live viewings as the rest of Quebec. But, you know, as I said before, I think it was to you, Steph, that kudos to the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, Gilles Courteau and his entire staff and all the teams, coaches, general managers, players, billets, everybody that had a hand in making the Q a successful league this year with regards to being able to hold a playoff and to be able to crown a champion. So hats off to the league for being able to do that.
Jean-François Chaumont.
Hi, Trevor. General question about the draft. How can you describe the value of 2021? I know it's hard to predict because of the pandemic and everything, but is it a good draft? Is it a good year? Is it an average year? Talking with some few scouts, some are saying, yes, Owen Power will be a good player. They might have a number of 10, 12 really good players in the first round, but it's not that great. What's your own point of view?
Well, you have to be careful because we won't know till 4 or 5 years down the road. I mean, the quality of players that this draft churns out, you know, and with lack of players playing a complete season. And, you know, we go back to the OHL not playing. A lot of Europeans, younger Europeans only playing, you know, the first half of the season. Who knows where these guys are going to top out as. So, you know, it's difficult to say where it fits in. I mean, I still believe you're going to get some quality players even in the 7th round. We're going to try to do our best to do that with our franchise here. So I'd say just hold on. Let's wait and see. We feel we can get some good players out of this draft, and looking forward to everything getting started for us late Friday night.
And if you're staying at number 30 in the first round, it's 30 because Phoenix will not have a pick in the first round. But is it the type of year where number 30 might be a little bit better because of you can see some surprise in the first round because of lack maybe of viewing about some specific players?
Yeah, that's a good point. We feel there's quite a few players, you know, that have similar asset value. And one of those players may be available to us at 30 who, you know, we may like at 15 to 20. We're just crossing our fingers and hope that happens for us.
Arpin?
Hey, Trevor, how are you? Couple of, I guess, somewhat philosophical questions for you or technical questions. Just the first one being, you mentioned earlier, we can all go look at your organizational depth chart and identify where there are holes. But, you know, the eternal best player available question is obviously there. Is it easier to plug holes drafting where you are than maybe if you were drafting where you were last year or the year before?
That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, it's easier to answer once we get to our picks and see what's available at those picks. You know what I mean by that? Like to see what players are available at that time is, so I can't really answer that question right now, but I guess the answer I could give you is we probably have more players available at pick 30 that are similar asset value than if we were picking in the top 10.
Right. So, okay, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And secondly, earlier when you mentioned that you, you know, the pandemic forced you to look at the way you evaluate things, to the way you do things, maybe incorporating more video, more technology. To what extent does your group lean on analytics? Would you use them more in this circumstance than maybe you otherwise would? And did you learn anything is there any value that you were able to gain if indeed you do work with numbers and data analysis in your evaluation?
Yeah, we've always worked with analytics and numbers and all that good stuff. The one thing we did last summer was hire a video scout for the amateur side, Yannick St. Pierre, who's done an outstanding job for us. You know, he was certainly one of the hardest working in our group this year. With regards to analytics, he involves that with his job duties as well. And it's something that each of us individually also look at and we discuss as a group in our meetings as well. So the only thing that I can say to answer part of your question was, you know, is it more value? The only thing is that there's less games played and some players haven't played. So analytics is based on, you know, games played and statistics and all that. So if there's less, I mean, I can't say that analytics has come more into the forefront for this draft particular. Does that make sense? Less players playing, less games played, less data available.
Yes, no, that does. That makes perfect sense. Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trevor. Marc-Antoine Godin.
Hi, Trevor. You know, you just talked about video and analytics and whatnot, but are there things in the way that you had to do things this season because of the pandemic and the adjustments you have to take in your way of doing business? Have there been changes that you were forced to do and that you're going to keep from this point on, saying, oh, you know what, that's something that we're going to hold on to and integrate it to our way of doing business from this point on?
Yeah, I think I touched on that at the start of the press conference here when I indicated we do a lot of virtual meetings now, and we do all our interviews were virtual because we weren't allowed direct contact, personal contact with any draft prospect. So those two things really led to moving forward in that direction and utilizing those tools next year and the year after and the year after. I mean, I think it's been excellent to be able to do that, to be able to work wherever you are and to be able to connect as a group and have your meetings and share your draft board, share scouting reports, etc. Meet with players, spend as much time as you want with the players on virtual interviews. That's been outstanding. The use of more video has been and very good as well. There's more video available to us. You know, you think back even 5 years ago, I was going to say 10, but even 5 years ago, there wasn't near the extensive video coverage and analytics and data that's available to us now. It's totally a game changer. So those are the things I would say. Not having to fly, you know, European scouts all the way over here just to meet, you know, for, you know, maybe meet with a Russian scout for 2 hours. I mean, so it's more economical, and I think it's more productive too when you can use the virtual setup.
Right.
Was there anything else you had, like you get anything in specific you want about that?
No. I think you touched on it. Okay. Also, I mean, you referred before to the fact that you had to go back to the notes from previous years for certain prospects. Usually, a lot of times, scouts will put a lot of stock on the draft year, and if the guy continues his progression, if the progression curve is interesting or a bit concerning. But how much of a leap of faith did you have to do this year to go back and put stock into older notes? Did it end up having more weight than it did before?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because in those years, it's, you know, when you're looking at an underage player, for example, I mean, you're getting a general idea of what the player is at that point because you're not concentrating on that player. And at the same time, that player is a rookie and is young and, you know, cutting his teeth. So there's a lot of development after that, what we call underage year. So players change a lot, and that's, you know, one thing we're handcuffed with you know, a lot of the prospects this year. I mean, I can look back and think of a lot of players that, you know, really improved by leaps and bounds from their underage year into their draft year. And even at the start of their draft year, into the late winter, early spring of their draft year, how much they improved. So, that's at a disadvantage. And that's why I think there's some players that will slip through the cracks. Maybe there'll be players, picked from the second round and on that may end up being better NHL players than some of the first rounders selected. There's a chance for that. I mean, there's a chance every year, but there's more of a chance this year, I believe. And even I think there's going to be players that will slip through the draft, and show next season, the season after, that they should have been NHL draft picks.
Jérémy Filosa.
Thanks, Trevor, for taking the time today. I just wanted to ask you, obviously you talked about, the draft being a gamble, and the deeper you go into the draft, the more it does become a gamble. But are those deep rounds this year, how much more of a gamble are they this year? And if you are to take a chance on somebody, gambling on a player, are you more inclined this year specifically to maybe pick a player from the queue? Thank you.
I think it goes for any league that, if you got some good information, or you've done some good homework and your projections bang on, there's going to be some real value to the later rounds. And I think there's going to be real value to the later rounds more than other seasons because, as I said, I think players are going to slip through the cracks, of the upper and mid rounds. So that goes for the Q as well as any other league. The only thing with the Q I'll say is that, all the teams got to see them play. So there may be, less players slip through the cracks than, the OHL, for example, who didn't play.
Okay, we'll go with four more. We'll go with Stu, John Lou, Jared, and Eric Leblanc. Stu, you're up.
Hey, Trevor, just looking back a little bit, do you think there's some teams kicking themselves right now that they didn't take Cole Caufield? And what's impressed you most about what he's done since you did select him?
Yeah, I mean, we're just happy and lucky that he was there, when we picked. And, what's impressed us the most, I believe, is, we spent a lot of time with him in his draft year. I think that might have been the last combine we had. We took him for dinner. He's always smiling. He's an energetic, happy-go-lucky young man. He's a joy to be around. He brings everybody up that he's around. And I'm just impressed with the way that he stepped into the NHL in the high-pressure situations, the NHL playoffs, overtime, and not just doing what he does well, but improving on the areas that he needed to improve on when he was at Wisconsin this year before he came to us, improving his play, without the puck, along the D zone wall, etc. And this my most vivid memory of Cole is we took him for dinner and he ordered this big sundae for dessert, and it was huge, pile of ice cream and chocolate and butterscotch sauce all over it, and we all joked about that. But he burns that off pretty quick. So I always joke with him about that. But we're very happy that he's part of our organization.
One more, if I can ask, just about Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I know when you're talking about drafting 18-year-old kids, and you're talking about us remembering ourselves at that age. And like Kotkaniemi, I was sort of a tall, lanky kid. I'm just wondering, when you're drafting tall, lanky kids like that, how much maybe is the development different for him concerned to like a Cole Caufield, where a kid like Kotkaniemi, sort of like a Great Dane puppy, I guess, sort of still growing into his body?
Yeah, that's where, the off-ice training is crucial. He's getting the proper training, nutrition, etc. Goes for every athlete, every player, but for them, it may take a little bit longer. We also have to remember how old he is. He cut his teeth real young here with us, and, he's still a very young player and hasn't reached our projection yet. So yeah, the more compact guys, it's easier for them to play. Maybe it's harder to play because of their size, but they don't have to face that difficulty of being able to grow into their body and adapt.
John Luke.
Hey, Trevor. In light of the news that Marc Bergevin revealed with respect to Shea Weber, the uncertainty of his immediate future, in what ways does that perhaps alter your focus for this draft in the short term since this came to light just over the last week?
Well, John, what we do this weekend, we can't replace a Shea Weber. We can't replace him with any player we pick this weekend, you know, next year, for next season or the season after. I mean, these players that we're picking are, especially where we're picking, are you know, we have to wait on them. You know, Cole, you know, was a higher pick. KK was a higher pick, and, you know, they got into our lineup sooner. But these players we're picking are, you know, we're talking about 30th, and then, you know, way back as we move through the draft. So we can't expect to replace Shea Weber, but we will try to pick players that will play for us and will help us win not only regular season, but get through the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I can't tell you when they're going to play.
Yeah, understood. I'm also wondering, how does Shea affect you, the work that you do, your department, even though he doesn't have a direct connection to what you do, just how, as a captain, as the type of player and person he is, how he's kind of has that effect on every aspect of the organization, including your department?
Yeah, it's great to see the young players that we draft come in and get to learn from a guy like Shea Weber. You know, we have a lot of guys like that. You look around the dressing room, and, you know, that's a big part of the reason why we got through the playoffs into the Stanley Cup final. You know, guys like Pricer and Gallagher and Corey Perry. I mean, those guys, and I mean, I can't name all of them, but there's so many of them. You know, we're able to rub off and to lead these guys, show these young players, you know, how to win. And I mean, that's of so much value, you know, learning how to win for these young players. And, you know, hopefully that will continue. And I know we have a lot of character in a tight knit group, and we hope that everyone else can pick up the slack that we'll miss from Shea, and be able to pick up these young guys and keep them going down the right road in the future.
Jared?
Hi, Trevor. You mentioned before about having less data. One of those factors is obviously the fitness testing at the combine and something like that. So going into, you know, a second year without that data point, do you prefer to look at the on ice, and how does it change how you look at these prospects and when you're at the table?
Yeah, that's important data that we're missing last year and this year. And we can't replace it, you know, with any video or anything. I mean, unless you videotape, you know, a workout or something. But, and we've gotten, you know, a little bit of data from agents. We'll pass that along. But it is a crucial part of the process of our own draft process that's missing. And, you know, we're trying to get through this. I think we did a good job last year, especially with our first pick. And also the medical data. I mean, so we don't have full medicals done on all the players. I mean, the NHL Central Scouting, you know, they're out there and they try to get as much medical data as they can for us, and we're able to look at that. But we don't get to medically screen the players the way that we always have been at the NHL Combine. So there is, you know, a bit of risk not having that data available to us.
And one more quick question, if I can. You mentioned, you know, your goal is to find players for the Montreal Canadiens, and that doesn't end at the draft. Obviously, you know, Nick Suzuki is an example of a player that you scouted, that you added later on. How does an ECHL team in the organization allow you to give these players that might be at the end of your draft board a chance to play professionally, keep an eye on them?
Oh, this is great for us, for our whole organization. I mean, we'll be able to bring in guys that maybe slip through the draft, or we like as overage players, free agents, you know, sign them and get them into the East Coast League team in Trois-Rivières and have them play and develop there, and hopefully, you know, work their way up through Laval and then maybe earn themselves an NHL deal. We look back at David Desharnais. What a prime example. I mean, we signed him as, you know, free agent out of our rookie camp. We all know the story. Went to the East Coast, tore it up, won the championship, scoring championship, MVP, went to Hamilton, was involved in another championship there, and eventually made his way here to Montreal. And we all know the career Dave had. So, we're looking for more guys to follow in the footsteps of David Desharnais within our organization. And, we're going to do our part on that. And Scott Mellenby's doing his part on the pro side. And, hopefully we can churn out some future NHLers that end up coming through Trois-Rivières.
And we'll close this with Éric Leblanc.
Hey, Trevor, you were quite positive about the video and the virtual stuff during your answers today. But I talked to a few scouts in the last month, and they were really happy to have the chance to see games, live games. And they even changed, their evaluation of a few players. What could you say about that? And do you heard about your scouts about, that problem and what they changed during the year?
Oh, I know that firsthand. I mean, that's a good point you brought up. I watched some players on video, then I went and saw them live, and I picked up on a lot of information live that I couldn't pick up on video. So for me, the perfect world, you need a combination of the two. It was nice last year that we had the live viewings first, and then you go back and review video, or watch some video during your live coverage. But to get the best read on a player, you need a combination of both. And to just do video, you're going to miss a few times if you just do video. So I hope that answers your question.